Welcome back, my friends, to the Day Camp Podcast. I'm Andy Friedkin, Director of Liberty Lake at the Philly suburbs of New Jersey.
I'm Sam Thompson from Crystal Lake Park District, Crystal Lake, Illinois.
And I'm Ehren Gluckstein from Camp Robin Hood, located just outside of Toronto in Canada.
And we are day camp professionals joining forces to provide a forum for summer camp pros like you to share ideas and best practices across North America and beyond. And for today's Team Leadership Pod, we are joined again by my West Coast homie, Ryan Rosen from Camp Kinneret. Did I say it right?
You did. You got it.
Nice. Nailed it. Up in the Malibu adjacent mountains, just north of Los Angeles. And making her podcast debut is a woman that I've worked with for 19 camp seasons at Liberty Lake and the curator of the Liberty Lake Teen Leadership Program, Brandi Carnivale. How you doing, Brandi?
Hey, everybody.
All right, shaking out the jitters. All right, we're going to be good. It's going to be awesome. So, just to start us off, Ryan, can you tell us where you got your passion for teen leadership for and how that translates into the Kinneret Leadership Program?
Absolutely. So over the years, this will be my 25th summer in camp. And over the years, we've seen many people kind of go through our program and just not be ready to be counselors. And we started looking at the qualities needed for counselors and said, gosh, those are very similar to what you need just in life to be effective and successful in any job anywhere. And so we started going backwards, going, well, that's our fault. If they're not ready to be counselors, we haven't done a good job of teaching them how to be counselors and how to be ready for those things. And so we started working backwards from there. And we started looking at our program for our 8th and 9th graders. And we started being more intentional about what we were planning and preparing for them to give them better experience when they were ready to be counselors. And then we adjusted our 10th through 12th grade program as a byproduct. So we think of our 10th through 12th grade program as our minor leagues, getting them ready for the majors of being a staff member here at camp, whether it's a specialist or a group counselor or a rover or some other role. We wanted them to be ready for camp. And so that's how we've gone about our big picture, is kind of working them their way up into being ready to be on staff.
A rover. I like that. Everybody's got a different phrase for their floaters and supers and whatever. We do the Michael Brandwine super thing. So, all right. Interesting. So when you frame the program, right, to a potential teenager, right, that hasn't come through your program, right, how do you frame it? Like, how do you present it to them?
So for our 8th and 9th graders, the presentation is really towards parents still, but with the kids involved in it, to say this is a stepping stone to dip your toe into leadership. The idea of leadership is pretty broad, and so it's a little scary and overwhelming. So this is a way to dip your toe in it, where you're going to be with a counselor, you're going to still be with your peers, but as they get to an activity, the counselor is going to stop and say, what did I do? Where was I standing? How was I standing? Why did I say what I said? And break it down, and then give them opportunities amongst their peers to try it. And then after they do that for a couple of weeks, then they actually go into groups for a couple periods with a unique thing that they are working on. So their counselor will work with, have a conversation with you and say, you know what, this seems like something you're worried about or nervous about. Let's work on this today. And so they know they have this one thing they need to work on that day. So we simplify it, and that takes the fear away, because if they want to do nothing and just watch, that's fine. Or if they want to jump in and try it, that's okay too. So there's no risk involved for the first 8th and 9th grade program. Going to 10th grade, that's where most of them have their first interview with us. We call and talk to references. They come to days of training, and that becomes very real, like it's the first step into this world. And we really present it as a stepping stone. So we focus on 21st century skills. We target the things that will help them, the skills that will help them when they're in college and in future career paths, to start to develop these necessary skills. So we really talk about outcomes with our 10th through 12th graders and why it would benefit them.
That's awesome. So how do you actually go about doing that?
So during CILT orientation, we call them CILTs, which stands for Camp Internship for Leadership Training. So they are interns and they are campers. We do some basic intake questionnaires to gauge where they are on different skills. And we look at the 21st century model of some key factors. And then throughout their time in camp, we have them take additional questionnaires that help us see how they're doing and evolving through their time in camp. And so over the 3-year program, we can see their evolution, and they can see their evolution because there's very standard, typical things that we are measuring every single year.
Right. So, how are you measuring those kind of things, like during the actual camp season? Like how are you staying on top of them? How are you sort of mentoring them along the way?
Yeah, so they're paired with a leadership team member, and they meet at least once a week, if not more. And that leadership team member is talking about their own growth and development and their own personal skills. And so that's based on that initial assessment we did. And then we're also talking about how they're working with their group and their counselor and what they're doing within the campers and where they're struggling there. And then we talk about on our bus transportation program, how they're being involved on the bus. And that's typically most fearful because there's anywhere from 60 to 70 kids or people on that, and leading in that environment is really scary, whereas the group is small. It's usually 12 to 15 kids.
How many people are on your buses?
Anywhere from 60 to 70. We have 84 passenger buses.
What?
Yeah.
My goodness. What are they, tractor trailers with seats?
They're school buses, big yellow 84 passenger transit style school buses.
No, we ain't got nothing like that in the East Coast, I gotta tell you.
We don't have that white stuff on the ground.
Which is what?
Snow.
I guess it's safer going around those bends in Malibu. Yeah. No problem. Well, that's pretty hairy. So
it's really customized. That's the key part, is it's really a one-on-one with their leadership team member. So what each teen is working on is to where they're at. It's not the key points. And at one point we'll say, do you want to be a counselor? And some will say yes, some will say no. And we'll say, it doesn't matter what your answer is, because these skills are beneficial anywhere. It's just how you're working on them, how you're practicing them. Doing a presentation or introducing kids to an activity at Gaga is the same as doing a presentation in a boardroom. It's just you're wearing shorts and a t-shirt and there's dirt on the ground. So try to help.
That's great. That's a great metaphor. So you said they're assigned to groups. This is, you're talking about 10 to 12th graders. How about the younger ones, the middle school kids?
So the middle schoolers are with their counselor. So they're a group of, 15 8th and 9th graders, but they'll go out into a group of younger children for a couple periods each day after that initial period. So that way they are going to try to work on one skill. And it might be talk to one camper today who you've never talked to before. And that could be the most basic level of how do you strike up a conversation with someone. So some of these are just basic social skills. And some of these are like, how do you function in a world where you're coming to a workplace that you don't understand everything yet? And you're learning how to navigate within that new structure, because each day they'll be with a different group. So they could be with a group of 4-year-olds one day, and the next day they could be a group with 2nd graders. So they try each, but each day the skill they're working on is directed by their counselor, who's giving them a personal skill to work on.
Very intentional also. I like that a lot. All right, let's toss the ball to Brandi a little bit. So Brandi, first of all, Ryan's been on a pod before. He's a veteran. So we've heard his little life story. So can you just tell us the kind of things that happened in your life that sort of brought you to the way that you visualize and make the Liberty Lake team program happen? Because I think that has a lot to do with it.
Oh boy. So I never went to camp as a child, but I think was influenced by the people in my life that were important to me to kind of see a need, fill a need. So I sort of look at all of camp as like, what do we need to do? Like, what do we need to fix, or what do we need to give for this child? And when I started working at camp, Andy urged me into the team department, and I, for the first time, really looked at that age and said, what do these kids need? And they really need it. They needed a group of people that were going to help them find their voice and help them find their footing in this world that is crazy. And they needed an advocate. They needed somebody to empower them. And when I went to Andy, it was very unusual because our program is very independent. We tell them from the start that they don't get to come to camp, but Andy embraced it. And I think that's really what started the program off and kind of how I look at everything at camp.
Yeah, but you had also done that Ryla kind of thing. You had done stuff as a teen. You never went to camp per se,
didn't.
But you did have these sort of teen leadership experiences that most people don't get.
I did. I was very involved in high school. I had a lot of after school activities I was involved in, but I also attended the RYLA, which is the Rotary Youth Leadership Academy. And they're very different. And I was very fortunate to go to RYLA District 7500 with David Gowell. And he had a very unique approach to the program, which I don't think that was necessarily the reason I started it, but it certainly has a huge impact on how we approach it. and really just how we look at it in a very broad sense of really doing this for, this very difficult age group. So yeah, Ryla was amazing. Having that, it was a short experience. It's just a week. It's sort of like Girl State. I turned down Girl State to go to Ryla because it happens at the same time. And Ryla had air conditioning. So I went there because I don't particularly care for the heat. And it turned out to be an amazing experience. And the way they look at things is very much like thinking outside the box and really just being, growth mindset and always thinking of solutions. And that certainly comes in handy. I think that experience prepared me for my camp profession. And it certainly inspired me for a lot of things of what I do.
So when, and forgive me, there's an airplane flying over my head because I live near Fort Dix, and this, of course, always happens. So when I started Liberty Lake 19 years ago, and Brandi was there the first summer, and by the way, Brandi doesn't just head the teen leadership program, she's also the director of the camp and pretty much oversees the whole program for Liberty Lake. But I had come from a mindset of these teen leadership programs that it was either teen travel or it was this CIT thing in which it was like, okay, the parents pay you and then they work for you kind of thing. And then you'll pick up some pointers along the way, right? And God bless the camps that can get away with that in some ways, because it certainly it helps your bottom line for your staff budget because it augments, your supervision. But Brandi was always very hardcore about like, we're really not doing them a service by doing this, and Ryan mentioned it very eloquently that there's a lot of kids that go into these programs that are not going to be camp counselors, right? They're going to be accountants. They're going to sit in cubicles and be very happy doing bank recs their whole life, right? But they still need a lot of these life skills, right? And Brandi was on top of that from day one. And the first few years we ran, I would call a traditional CIT program, right? And then we morphed into this very intentional one, like Kinneret, where, it's really, it's not about making money, frankly. And because we have to put a lot of our best resources there, right? We have, we joke around, like, the staff that is in my oldest campers, right, are some of the best people of my entire 300-person staff, and most day camp directors think, well, I'm going to put my best staff with the youngest kids because those are my, annuities, and they could keep on coming back for more. But, from speaking as a former middle school teacher, those are the most challenging kids that you're going to have, they're the ones that really need, experience and insight, maturity, patience, my gosh. Right. So Brandi, why don't you tell everybody about the Liberty Lake Teen Program a little bit?
Sure. So I'm going to say when Andy first, it was funny because we didn't have any teens, and then all of a sudden we had a couple teens that were, aged out in theory, and we were like, oh, we have to start a program. And we did start it slow, but from the beginning, we always wanted it to be broader, and we always wanted it to be something that was going to serve the kids. We are youth professionals. I'm, super inspired by like Ben Applebaum and the message to serve a greater purpose. And so when we started planning our teen leadership program, that was the umbrella. And it has certainly developed because this will be our 11th teen leadership year, I'm pretty sure, right? 11 maybe? No, I'm sorry, 18, because I just sent out the letters. It's our 18th year for our teen leadership program. And we started it with 1 year, and it was our entering 10th graders, because that was our aged out year. And it was focused on leadership skills, which are now referred to as the 21st century skills, or, the social skills. And that's what we built it around. Very much problem solving, thinking outside the box. It was a small group. There was one staff member, and we sort of fit it in around our camp program. And then as it evolved, and as we realized how much our parents appreciated it and how much they wanted their teens to have something that not only kept them busy, that wasn't reason, but it was empowering them. They were coming home and they were sharing their experiences. And we got such positive feedback, and we wanted to do so much more that we actually broke the program into a 2-part program with entering 9th grade, which is a choice. You can choose to be a 9th grader as a regular senior camper, a super senior, and do another year in that division, just like you would regular camp year, or you can agree to go into the team leadership program at that point, and then you're a leader. And that's what we refer to them as. We don't call them campers, and we don't refer to them as any kind of counselor in training. We call them team leaders. And they're campers in training, and they are LITs are leaders in training. So we have counselors, we have campers in transition for our CITs. That's the entering ninth grade year. And they are transitioning from a camper into a leader. So that is what we refer to them as. And then our LITs are leaders in training as entering 10th graders. And the first part of the program is a very introductory, like you said, dipping your toe, Ryan, into that world of responsibility. And they have an amended program, so they still get some choice electives that they would have as a camper, but they also focus half their day on learning skills, looking, inward, figuring out what kind of choices they want to make and what choices they did make. And then as a 10th grader, they are all the way in, and their whole day is focused, and it's very intensive. And those two programs together, when you're completed, you graduate as a team leader. And we give them a lot of feedback. We now have 7 dedicated staff to that program, not including myself. And we work year round on developing it, and they get constant weekly feedback. They are given real experiences to run a spirit event or do a fundraiser. I think it's a really excellent program. And by the end, if they don't want to come back to camp, they have all these great skills. And if they do, we have really great staff. So it works out all the way around.
Yeah, and we took a lot from the Michael Brandwine model of the coaching cards to treat the time they spend with the kids as coaching experiences, and talk about what they're doing well, what they need to work on. We've dubbed them glow and grow cards to keep it nice and unoffensive to people.
And I'm going to interrupt because, we started the team leadership program our second year of camp. And now that we're in 2020, we're looking at it, and we're connecting our staff program and the way we train our staff so that it's a coherent program, because these skills are good skills for whatever age you're talking about. And it's just the way we teach those skills. So we're working on now this cohesive training program that's for starting at 9th grade all the way up to Andy and I and our directing team. And I think that's really important, the way it's evolved and the way it's grown, because we're using the same kind of coaching cards now for our older staff as well. So it's been a really unique program to see it progress, and it really seems like something that's going to work for everybody and be more impactful, I think.
Right. So the people that work in our program have to be able to be mentors and be able to sit down with these people and really talk to these kids one-on-one. They have to be able to facilitate workshops, with large groups of kids, and debrief with them. Right. So it's definitely not the kind of thing that you can't really throw college students in there very often. It tends to be teachers who have a real affinity towards this age group, to thrive in there.
Since you guys have such sophisticated programs, are you just drawing on the camper population that's aging out, or are you actually are you able to draw people from the community, new business that then can help build your
Yeah, well,
base?
it's a interesting age, right? I think that what we found the immediate success we found from this was that a lot of kids that are entering 10th grade, that's a great opportunity. And especially kids entering 9th grade. In our area, entering 9th grade is where high school starts, right? So all of a sudden, these kids, their mindset is like, holy mackerel, I'm going to high school. Like, everything's going to change. It's going to be hard. It's going to be weird. It's going to be different, right? So that's a great opportunity to then be like, hey, guess what? You're sort of crossing over to the, now you can be one of the leaders of camp. Now you can sort of reframe your brain in the summer that you're not just here for, having fun. It's for, real, you're trying to create a toolbox for yourself for the rest of your life, and they really bought into that. And then entering 10th grade, now that they've had a year of high school under their belt, then they're really, really into that. So I think that we probably should do a better job of reaching into the schools and talking to the guidance counselors and finding, you know, those National Honor Society kind of kids who are the high achievers that would do it. And a few kids every year find us that way.
Yeah.
But we are in an area where, you know, most people don't go to camp. So I don't think they really, you know, get it. You know, we talked about rebranding our entire camp, calling it a leadership academy, just so people would just like look at it and go, oh, wow.
I think where it helps us, we do get a couple brand new people, you know, that come, but I think where it helps us mostly is for us, we have a lot of older campers in general, and for them to be able to come until they're 15, I think that's important because families see that more of an investment. Like it's just not like a 1-year thing and then they have to find something new. They can put their teen someplace for a few years. And I think that's really appealing. So maybe not so much like brand 15-year-olds, but I think it appeals to our teens in general.
Right. It also appeals to the communities that we serve that are not prototypical camp communities, so that these are not kids that would be optioning to go to sleepaway camp, right? So you're getting people who are planning on being at home anyway, right? I think that a lot of our friends that run day camps in areas where it's like, oh, I'm 10 years old, time to go to sleepaway camp, like that's really hard to retain those people. And then you end up running camps, teen programs that have a lot of square pegs in them. Whereas we tend to have really relatively normal, high achiever kind of kids, you know, is what we find.
So we are in that category you kind of described, where we'll have kids, we start at 4. So we'll have kids who are with us for a lot of years. And then they get to a point where, you know, 4th, 5th grade, it's like, yeah, I'm supposed to do sleepaway camp. That's what I do. Or I do a specialty program, or I have to go to summer school, or I have to do these things that I needed to do. And so we have to navigate that. And so for our 8th and 9th graders, one of the things we've built into the program is 8th graders getting to talk to 9th graders about what it's like to go to high school, what it's like to make that transition, and what they're going to be missing. And that's a piece of what they do, and they navigate that. At the same time, we reach out to our former campers when it's time for this program and say, hey, remember us? You were with us for a long time. And we get a lot of them to come back, and oftentimes they'll bring friends with them. So once they go into our 10th grade program, we have quite a few kids who in the community navigate and bring their friends with to say, hey, I think you may like this. And Andy, we approached, I think, a little different is we have a pretty broad we'll accept a lot of different types of kids into our program intentionally, because for some of them, they didn't grow up around camp. And so camp is just like deer in headlights. What did I get myself into? Why do these people all know these songs and where to go and what to do and all those things? And it's terrifying for them. But we also see the growth that they experience. And one of the best comments I ever got in this program was a brand new 10th grader who came to us after his first summer said, camp was the first place I could actually be myself. And this was someone who's going to 10th grade. To me, that was the most powerful thing, that this was a child who was terrified coming into it, but we gave him a chance. We created a nurturing, caring environment for him to challenge himself, and he responded well and grew, and he actually applied to be a counselor this year. So we're excited for that. But it's really cool to see those kids who are really shy, who aren't the high achievers necessarily, or who are really scared. But this camp can be a place where they can finally find their voice and figure themselves out. And that will be so empowering for them later in life.
Yeah, it's great watching those kids grow. That is really one of the benefits that we have here as a camp. But we definitely frame the program as being a serious program, you know? So I we don't want kids to be in it to just goof around. You know, like that's one of the things that we struggle with, especially with the entering 9th graders, many of which have been with us for 10 years at that point, you know, as campers. So that's just something that it's always going to be a struggle. So Sam, what goes on at your place? Because I know you utilize them.
Yes. Well, all of our 6th graders go to teen camp. We have 6th through 9th grade for teen camp, and about 80 campers usually, and then about 40 junior leaders and CITs. So 7th and 8th grade are junior leaders. They're assigned to a counselor. They get to choose their age group. And with that, they're more just getting used to modeling what you should be doing with the kids. They have their own safety training for both. We used to make the parents come to the safety training just so they had an idea what these 7th and 8th graders who are junior leaders were going to be doing versus what the counselors in training who are 9th through 12th grade were going to be doing. They have weekly check-ins. They have to answer 3 questions every week about what was my, what am I working on? What was my favorite thing? What do I want to do more of? And then we also answer 3 questions on how they're doing. So we kind of keep their temperature going all along. We, this year we're offering first aid and CPR for the CITs. The CITs are not assigned to a group. They're assigned to a director. And then they work more with special events, programming. They can go in the kitchen. And, you know, they have a lot more freedom and responsibility. I do have quite a few special needs kids that this is their home. And so if they're in the CIT program, because it's home, we're working on their confidence. By talent show time, they're doing solos. You know, we're just working on the skills they're already working on, but keeping them involved in camp as long as we can. They get a thank you trip, so they can go to Great America with Teen Camp, or they can do the overnight at the arcade as their thank you for the help during the summer. And then we always have a charity event sometime in the summer. My tip of the week will be one of them, but they've done everything from swim-a-thons for our special rec organization, or making blankets for dogs that have cancer. You name it, they come up with what they want to do, and then they do that project sometime during the summer. So very similar. And
So what age are the youngest staff that you guys have?
the youngest staff, they have to be graduated from high school. So
Graduated from high school. So
yeah.
so you have kids in a teen leadership program similar to Ryan. You have them in there for a while, theoretically.
Yeah, through 12th grade.
Wow.
And if they're special, sometimes through 19 years old. So
Oh, that's
yeah.
interesting. Yeah, and then you know, I like the way that you rotate them around a little bit to get that that workforce development thing going. It reminds me of there was a YMCA camp that I visited, a resident camp that for their teen leadership program, they like intentionally gave them a week of this, like they got them all lifeguard certified at a certain age. You know, they gave maintenance crew experience. You know,
Nice.
food service. Then they were in the creative arts, and they were athletic. Like they really bounced them all around. And then certainly they knew, you know, if they were going to be hiring them the next year, you know, where their talents lied and where their passions were.
I have a couple staff right now that came all the way through and were the most amazing junior leaders and CITs, and now she's one of my best staff. And she works my before and after school program too, and the teachers rave about her. So it is wonderful to get to hang on to them and not lose your good people or lose contact with them in the in-between years.
Mhm.
So you can keep them.
That's great. So, you know, I was buzzing around on Kinnerit's teen leadership web pages and stuff like that, and they do a really good job of explaining it. And you know, Ryan has come up with a what do you call it? Their skills of life or whatever.
Yeah, so we have 9 kind of categories that we're looking for or measuring for them to look at. And so the major headlines are leadership, creativity, communication, responsibility, focus, engagement, problem solving, initiative taking, and decision making. And then we look at those in camp and say, how do you practice those things along the way? So those are kind of the major headline categories. And then there's actually some good graphics on that site, Andy, that people can take a look at. And then we have a little video that we did with Powtoon that you can watch for folks to watch what it's like to be a part of the CILT program as well, so they get to understand that as well.
Yeah, that'll be in our program notes, by the way. If you go to daycamppodcast.com.
Andy, you mentioned the National Honor Society. I
Mm-hmm.
do letters every year for volunteer hours for National Honor Society. I see Brandi's shaking her head too, yeah. So that takes up some time at the end of the summer.
We do a lot of letters with them. We also do an exit where they learn how to like do a job interview and how to fill out an application. And we also write letters to the future, which is why I was confused earlier, because last year was the first year we sent out our 10-year letters. So they'll write letters to themselves in 10 years about where they want to be and their vision and, you know, yada, yada, yada. And then we mail it back out to them. And it's a really cool way for them to sort of check in and also do kind of goal setting and visualization. So it was neat. And last year I got to mail out the first batch of those letters. So we do all sorts of letters.
Yeah. And going to the staff interview thing, we tell them that their last day as a team leader is at their job interview. So even if they don't want to work at camp, we want them to go through the interview process, right? And have their first job interview be with people that already love and support them, that they don't have to be super nervous about. You know?
And give them good feedback. So we give them
Yes.
feedback at the end, and we say, this is what you should have done. And oftentimes we will bring them back in if they want to, or if we're potentially considering them, we will bring them back in for a second interview so they can work on that.
Yeah, very oftentimes, because they normally tank their first interview pretty badly, unless they're just exceptional.
How long, out of curiosity, Brandi, for your interviews, how long do you take with each person?
I actually don't do the interviews. I'm not involved.
Yeah,
because
we actually, and we make sure, that's a good point. We make sure that they're interviewed by people that don't know them, right? We bring in people that have no idea who they are to make it a cold thing. I'd say they're usually half hour, 45 minutes, whatever a typical, I mean, we hire a lot of 16 to 17-year-olds as staff. And honestly, you can't go much more than a half hour, 45 minutes anyway. There's not that much there to pull from.
Sometimes they seem to be torture when you're like pulling teeth at that age to get any information from them.
Yes, or they're nervous and they won't shut up, one or the other.
Parents are waiting in the car, and
Yeah.
You guys were talking about what you named your program. One year I tried to call them tweeners. That did not go over well. Don't go that way.
When you guys are selling the program, do you charge like a comparable fee to the campers, same fee, more?
That's a great question.
I think this came up on one of our earlier podcasts about charging a premium almost for this kind of.
Yeah, it's a great question, and most camps that run typical traditional CIT programs, which I would not call what Ryan does or what we do, they charge less because they're part of the workforce, right? And that's understandable. And that's what we did at first. And then I changed that. And now we charge the same, when in actuality, I should probably be charging more, but we don't have a travel aspect. So it's sort of hard for me to explain that because I'm not taking them on any trips. So we charge the same. And when people question that, because they do, because parents just think, oh, well, I don't understand. They're like interning. Why are they charging the same? And I have to explain the amount of time and the caliber of staff that I have to put into them. It's worth it. What about you, Ryan?
We for our 8th and 9th graders, they're charged just like regular campers, so it's a total regular fee, same exact number. But for our 10th through 12th graders, we charge them a very nominal fee, just to cover paperwork, more or less. And other than that, it's really we view it as a trade, because we're trying to help prepare them to be counselors. So if we can prepare them as CILTs to be counselors, then that's less staff we have to recruit when they get older.
Right, but
you take that recruiting dollar and move it into the CILT program.
But you also, I went to your website, you literally call it that's like your internship, division, right?
In California, it's 100% internship, and there's specific requirements in California that we have to meet in order for it to be qualified. And there have to be tangible things that they're getting out of it that they can walk away and say, I learned this and I grew in this way. It just can't be you're here working for free kind of thing. It has to be that they're getting more out of it than what they're giving.
Right. No, it's interesting. So Ehren, what do you guys currently do with your oldest kids?
So I think that the program that the two of you described, Ryan and Brandi, is kind of a hybrid of what we're doing. So we call it a traditional CIT program, but we've developed some elements over the years that we actually do it as a 2-year program, and it's an LIT first year and CIT second year, virtually the same experience, but with a development focused goal setting component at the beginning, an orientation that starts off the preseason with the parents separate from the kids to explain the differentiating factors and the fact that they're not going to be just campers. It's going to be a position of responsibility for them. And then we take them away on a 3-day overnight trip. Even though we're day camp, it's something that's become part of our tradition and gives them a chance to really work on some skill building and goal setting and all the things that they hope to achieve throughout or we hope to get out of them, I should say, throughout the season. They're introduced to those concepts, and we do weekly. Our CIT, LIT directors do weekly, I guess, experiences with the group. The CITs at one point, and then the LITs at a different point, to spend half a day going over some learnables and teachable elements. And so it is an educational experience for them, and a leadership training experience, but not as formal and not as sophisticated, I guess, as what the two of you have described. But I think that a goal of ours would be to get to that point eventually, and we've evolved over the years, and my wife has been part of that development and evolution over the past few years at camp, and it's been great to see it evolve. And from when I remember being a part of that program and kind of just goofed around all day, to what it's become. It's great, and I want to get to that point where we're charging a premium and we're bringing in people sort of as interns, so that we can build our staff base and give them that swim certification and all those things during the summer. I think that would be a great place to get to over the next few years, because you kind of take a chance on your first year staff when you don't know them, but this way they're coming in with that commitment and being part of that very structured environment, much more structured environment, while developing skills and having a sort of an informal job interview before the interview, I think is a key element of that.
So you mentioned the trip. I just want to say, my friend Jonathan Gold, his 10th grade crew, they do an extended, like close to a week trip every year with their team leaders, and it costs. I'm sure they pay for it, and it's a service trip. So they'll do a service. I remember one year they did a service trip at an Indian reservation in like Arizona or New Mexico or something like that. Like they do, yeah, they do some really, really cool stuff. And his family's can obviously afford it to be able to do those kind of things. But there's a lot that you can do, like the whole destination thing. I know for us, Brandi, you could tell them we do an overnight, and it's a pretty impactful experience.
We do an overnight. We do one fun trip to the beach because we are in Jersey, so we go to the shore. But we do a retreat over the weekend, and there's a lot of like what you would think of from a retreat, right? Like doing team building stuff, kind of breaking them down, making them tired. And at the end of it, like that night, we do a really very cool self-reflective kind of, this is your big moment kind of lesson with them. There's a stick involved. They write down on the outside of the stick the things that have been holding them back. It's like that transition moment. We start the conversation off by saying, up until this point, your parents made your decisions. They chose what groups you went to, what sports you did, what school you went to. Now you're starting that point in your life where you get to make your decisions, and really, how do you want those decisions to be? Like, what kind of person do you want? And we go through that kind of exercise, and they take the bark off the stick, and they start, fresh with like on their journey of leadership with this like awesome walking stick. And the idea is that like, that's their person now, like that's their identity as a leader. And it's a really, really cool experience in the woods and, by the fire. And it's something, I still have my stick. They bring us back like our leather brands. Andy and I have them. We've kept them over the years. So we wouldn't trade that for the world. That is certainly a huge part. That sort of emotional side of the program. The skills are so valuable, but a huge part of why the team program is successful, and I'm sure for all of you, is that these teams just need people to cling to. They need role models. They need people other than their parents, other than authority figures, really. Just people that they want to tell what they're afraid about and say things out loud to and cry to and just say, I want to be like that. And I think we give them that in so many different ways in the team leadership program. And it's so valuable to the people that they're going to become. And when we talk about preparing them for the world, like just taking those moments to say, let's kind of like talk about things is so monumentous with this age group.
Touching on something you said, Brandi, is the agreement with for them to understand like they're taking control of this, and so they'll apply. And I say they loosely because oftentimes it's a parent who has applied on their behalf. And so when they come in for the interview, we actually have this conversation with them, and we actually give them an agreement form that has some things on the top that are for them to fill out, and we talk about how their family keeps their family's calendar and what they need to mark on said calendar. And if it can't be that mom or dad are the ones who wake them up and do this, they have to do it. They have to devise a way to do it. And on the bottom, it says that it's for the parent to sign in. It basically says, I understand that my child is making this commitment. And if I adjust their availability or schedule, that will impact them being able to continue in the program. And the goal is that it's a prompting tool for the conversation, because this is for many the first time that they've ever had to have that type of conversation with their parent. I started at Camp Canaret in this program, and it did not look like this at all when I started. And by 100%, my mom was the one who called and did that. And looking back, I know what it's like to have that parent and she did it out of love, but it was keeping me from learning that I need to do that. So that's one of the things that we do. And if you're going to start a program like this, I think it's really key to help kids have that conversation of how to transition that conversation with their parents.
Yeah, I agree. We bring the parents in the fall. We bring the kids and the parents in. We do a debrief with the teens, but we bring in all the parents and we explain the program. We talk, we talk about the expectations. We really kind of let them know, because we don't give the parents a lot of feedback throughout the summer on purpose. But we start with that, and then there's a whole application process. So the campers in transition sign an agreement along with their parents as well, Ryan. Without their buy-in, I mean, we have to have their buy-in. And then we also make them sign like a policy agreement of just like being a role model and what the rules mean. As an LIT, we have 2 letters of recommendation they need to get. They have to fill an application that is separate from the camp application. They need to give us the grade report, and they need to sign the expectation thing, the policy paper. So it's to start them off on the right foot. It's to give them what you had said, that first taste of what they're looking forward to. And it also really allows me to tell the parents, do you really want to fill out their college applications? Then let them get their letter of recommendation. Let them ask that teacher 16 times and follow up, because if not, you're going to be doing their work forever. So it allows me to have that conversation with the parent at least. But I think it's super important to really from the very get-go start empowering them with what they're buying into.
All right, before we go to the program tips of the week, I just want to ask the question to you guys, for your teen leaders, for your, the young high school ones. Do you give them some social time also? Because at this age, they're going to find the social time, whether you give it to them or not. So do you actually carve it out for them?
For me, it's during swim time. They can have their own swim time, and that's when they get to just, be friends.
Mm-hmm.
For our CITs, which are 8th and 9th graders, they're together, so they have time in the morning, the afternoon when they're not with groups, or they have their group time. For our 10th through 12th graders, they have some downtime that they can during the day, but we really talk about with them is like, when you're here, be here and be committed to being here. And then when you go home, you'll have plenty of time to do those things, because it's a day camp. You still have every night, and you guys can text and do whatever non-face-to-face communication you want to do then. You don't need to do it while you're at camp. But now it'll be interesting to see how what we're going through impacts that, because I think they're going to value face-to-face time differently than they ever have before.
100%. I agree with you. I met with my team leadership staff earlier today, and we talked about we have to rewrite the program to embrace a much more kind of decompressing, talking about like how it affected them, a lot more focusing on that emotional side effect of this. So that's super duper important. But we do work in fun time. It's not a lot, like it's not a priority, but we do think that helps with the bond. We think it helps with the buy-in, and like for their staff, like when their staff is giving information, they're going to take it better from somebody they really like because they had a cool moment at volleyball. So we do work it in. Sometimes it'll be, they have a free swim where they do get to hang out. They eat lunch together. We work in spirit events for them. So we do a spirit activity every single day for every division. And we work that in with the LITs as much as possible. And then periodically through the 8-week program, we bring in we do fun things. Like it'll be like a volleyball break, because we do make them make a 6-week commitment. out of the 8-week regular season. So we work it into the program.
Two things if I can touch on real quick. One of the things we're looking at doing this year before all this happened, and now it's even better that we're doing this, we're trying to meet them where they're at right now. And so we used to do weekly meetings where we would catch them up on the things they need to know. And this year we had looked at, and we've been moving towards doing short videos that we can send them a link to every day that has like not necessarily a skill of the day, but like things that we're noticing or things for them to work on or that are upcoming in smaller chunks for them to make it more easily digestible for them. And so we're going to test that out this year to see how that works, to try to meet them more where they're at.
I think my biggest thing with this whole pandemic is that it's such a teaching tool for us. Like we've always, I'm sure you guys have, hey guys, this is how you're supposed to be on social networking. This is, it lasts forever. But now we get to say to these teenagers who never really got the point, you were locked in for 2 months and you had your iPad and you had your cell phone and you had your computer, but you still wanted to see your friends and you still wanted to sit next to them, because guess what? That's what being a friend is. It's not the screen, and there'll never be a replacement for it. So, Andy and I were talking earlier about what we're learning from this situation. And I think it's going to be such a strong teaching tool for them because they've lived it now. So it's not me telling them or their, teen mentor telling them. They've done it and they miss their friends and they miss the hugs and the family. So we're going to use it fully to our advantage, but also do, Ryan, like what you said, I think it's important to meet them where they are.
All right. Before we get to the tip of the week, I just want to give a shout out to our sponsors who are kicking butt through this whole coronavirus kind of fun stuff thing here. The CRS people who went to the conferences, despite all the things, and are plugging away and have to build water, fun things and playgrounds and stuff in this crazy short amount of time before the camp season is going to start. AM Skyer, who, it's never been harder to be in an insurance world than right now, and they are doing an amazing job keeping in touch with their clients. And the American Camp Association, New York and New Jersey, which pivoted right after Tri-State and put out a whole webinar series. I did one today with Deb Gilboa, and there's a whole bunch of other ones, and they're free and they're open to the public, and it's super. And it's just a great group of people over there trying hard to keep everybody together and upbeat. So anyway, our program tip of the week, Brandi, this is what I'm going to do. Ready? I'm sneak attacking you. All right. I couldn't. Yeah, I am. She's looking at me really scared now. So my program tip of the week is for Brandi to explain the board busting thing.
Board breaking. Okay.
Yeah. So it's a teen leadership. This is teen leadership stuff.
Teen leadership. I will say that this is not an original idea, but it's a great one. So we take the martial art boards that you've seen, like, people break through, and we start with a guided meditation because it is overall a visual exercise. And we get them in a place where they're thinking about their life and they're thinking about what they want to be in the future and what they want to see in the mirror. And then we give them this board and we have them write down on one side of the board their goal, whatever it may be. Sometimes they write like better relationships with their parents. Other times it's about getting into a college. And then on the other side, they write down what's stopping them from that goal: confidence, motivation, whatever they come up with. And then through coaching and through support, we actually get the kids to literally break through the board, just like they're little ninjas. And it's super empowering. And we do sit down and we debrief, and there are always tears. I will tell you, and since I was sneak attacked, I did a board breaking with Andy, and he did not break his board the very first time. So needless to say, even though these boards are meant to be broken and they're not thick boards, it is about what's in their head at the moment, which is the lesson. You can only be stopped by yourself. That's only the real obstacle in life is your hang-ups and you holding yourself back. And once we can kind of talk through that, they eventually get through their board. Andy did get through his board. And I'm happy to say that we've always gotten our campers to the board. But if you are
we'll spend hours getting a kid through a board.
Yes. If you do try this at home, make sure you allow yourself that time You never want to send anybody home without getting through that board, although I'm sure we could put a learning moment on that, teachable moments in all our failures, right? But we definitely want to get these kids through the boards. So it's a positive note. And it's one of the best things that we do with them, really.
All right, thanks. All right, Sam, you're up.
Okay. So when I was looking for different charity projects to do, my dad was really into Habitat for Humanity. And I wondered if there was a way to have the kids do that. So they do have a program called A Brush with Kindness. And basically they go and paint fences and do yard work for old people or somebody who's disabled. Sometimes you have to do it on a Saturday, but it's still, they complain when they first get there, and then at the end of the day, they're so excited because, you know, they did all these projects for people. So.
That's terrific. We're actually doing something right now. We're starting an initiative at Liberty Lake. We have a former camp staff who now runs activities at sort of like a convalescent home, a Masonic home. And we're going to start a pen pal kind of program with our campers to give them some stuff. But the idea was pre-pandemic that we were going to go into their home. Well, hopefully it's still on, and that we'll be painting their walls and doing projects in there.
Yeah.
So that's great. Yeah, we got to utilize our seniors. There's no doubt. All right, Ehren, you're up.
That's awesome. The idea of doing some charitable things is great, and you know, I again, like, as we evolve our program, I hope that some of that can come into play for us as well. So my tip is more from you know, dealing sort of making the most of the current situation, keeping people engaged without you know, without doing you know, face-to-face reunions, as you know, the leadership teen leadership kids have done in the past. They're using technology, obviously, as many people are. So there's two things that have been cool. One is the idea of the Instagram party, and having, you know, the leaders of the program from the previous summer, you know, keeping the kids engaged by doing some fun stuff on Instagram, and, you know, using those you know, using the different features where you can bring people into the events and have, you know, guests and different people saying hi or showing their camp spirit, things like that. And it's a great way to get that group involved and, you know, engaging our younger kids in you know, having these the people from that program come in and, you know, engage our younger kids, not bringing the younger kids into the Instagram lives, but bringing the older kids in and giving them that opportunity. But also this other thing I just came across recently, which is this idea of using Google Tours plugin. No, I know it's not a plugin, but it's a Google Tour feature that they have. So, you know, just we're creating some content, hopefully for people to virtually see some of the things we do at camp. So being able to use something like that and bring our future, you know, potentially future leaders, future staff people into the development of that stuff, I think would be a great way to you know, use this time where people are kind of at home looking for something great to do, and you know, camp being a passion of most of these kids, you know, being able to use their tech savviness to help us develop those things. So I think that's something that we're going to explore in the near future.
All right. Okay, Ryan, bring us home.
All right, so I've got two different sides of it. One is for the camp itself. So we look at at the end of every summer, we look at what we saw in our staff and what were the holes that we saw or skills they didn't have yet. And then we go back to our CITs, our 8th and 9th graders, and go, how are we teaching them this? And if we're not, then we start teaching them that. And so preparing them. So we saw a couple years ago, creativity for our staff was really hard. So that is one of the core things that we do for our 8th and 9th graders, and implore upon our 10th through 12th graders is to really practice that. And we really think of creativity as a muscle. So the more you practice it, the easier it is to do. And you just have to keep working it out and stretching it to be better at it. So that's it. Use the opportunity with your current staff to be able to then go backwards and say, okay, how can I start teaching this in future summers so they're more equipped and better equipped when they get to that point and are ready to be counselors. So that's on that end of it. The other is really we have our our CILTs who are going into their second and third years, we talk to them about their opportunity to be a role model and a leader. And for many of these kids, they don't have other opportunities to do that. And so we give them opportunities with the ninth graders, with the eighth graders, with the kids who are just coming into the program to be that role model and to take them under their wing. And so we give them opportunity to do that. So find a way for a child who's never been a role model before, maybe they're only child, maybe they're the quiet, shy one who now has found their voice, who's now found their footing, to now take a step forward and recognize they are responsible for your camp culture and help teach them that they're responsible for it. And if they're not willing to speak up, then nobody is going to speak up. So we take that opportunity with our youngest kids to start doing that as they've been in the CILT program for a year or two, to keep doing that and carry on, and not have it be like high school, where if you're a 12th grader, you don't care about the freshmen, but instead go the opposite route and say, it's your responsibility to take care of the freshmen. And once you've been in the program, it's your duty to pass that on, so you create the culture of what you want it to be for future generations.
Profound. Excellent. So one last question for you, Mr. Rosen. How many staff are on a bus of 84 kids?
Well, it's not 84 kids.
Oh, it's 84 humans.
84, right. 84
butts.
seatbelt. So usually we'll cap out at 65 humans on the bus, but we'll have anywhere from 6 to 8, maybe 10, depending on the bus.
I hope so. Wow, that's awesome. Well, thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Brandi, for sharing your teen leadership wisdom with us today. That was terrific. Thank you, Sam and Ehren, as always. We want to thank our actual producer, Matt Hansberger, our GoCamp Pro executive producer, Travis Allison, and our dedicated sponsors, ACA New York, New Jersey, Commercial Recreation Specialists, and AM Skyer, for allowing us to bring this podcast to you. If you don't want to miss an episode of the Day Camp Pod, you should subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google, or wherever else. Give us a nice rating while you're at it, and check out the show notes for this and our other episodes at daycamppodcast.com, and send us some feedback and new ideas of future pods at daycampquestions@gocamp.pro. Thank you for listening and making yourself a better day camp professional. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with another inclusion pod on the Day Camp Podcast.